So since Christopher Nolan's upcoming film Tenet is out in just over a month, like many YouTubers, I'm going to be reviewing all of his films from the start in time for Tenet, so I can do a ranking of all his films afterwards. So in today's video, we're going to be reviewing his first movie called Following. So this is Christopher Nolan's debut movie, directing back in 1998. It's pretty much about this man who likes to follow strangers, not to kind of stalk them or blackmail them or anything, he's kind of interested to see what other people do in their lives. And one day he's caught doing that on a person, and that person kind of takes him under his wing to burgle. Now, before I get into it, because it is a very low budget film, I believe it's only $6,000 used in this, or £60,000, something like that. I'm not going to kind of put it in proportion with low budget movies. I think it's fair that I review all movies, all in all, if that makes sense. So like if there's a really good comedy, it probably won't be a 9, it'll probably be like an 8 max, if you get what I mean. Like it'll be a good comedy, but it won't be one of the best films in the world. I'm not sure if that entirely makes sense. So I'm pretty much putting it up against all other films, just so it's fair. I'm not going to say because it's such a good low budget movie it's going to get a 9. But anyways, on to my review. Yeah, so in between takes I've just confirmed that it is $6,000 used to make this film, so that is not much at all. Comparing to what Nolan gets to spend nowadays, it's just crazy to see where such a great director can start. Starting with $6,000, and now Tenet is going to be over $200 million. It's just crazy to see. But yes, for such a low budget movie, this is such a great accomplishment. The runtime is only just over an hour. I believe it's like an hour and 15 minutes. But the story that Nolan has told here fits that perfectly. It's a very interesting and strange kind of story, but it just gets straight to the point. It doesn't have all this unnecessary dialogue. Many movies feel like they have to fill up a certain runtime, so they have all this unnecessary dialogue that doesn't really add anything. And some movies have it so they're running short on runtime, so they have to get rid of all this unnecessary dialogue, and it just seems rushed with what they have to say. But this movie doesn't really contain any unnecessary dialogue. It doesn't feel rushed, it feels all necessary, and it gets straight to the point and makes it a quick-paced movie just to sit down and watch. To elaborate on what I mean by unnecessary dialogue, I pretty much mean anything that doesn't really add something to the plot. Everything that is said is necessary to the plot, and it doesn't really have much character building besides that, but which is kind of the point. It's a bit of a mystery. These characters, they're mysterious. Straight off the bat, you can really tell it's a low budget indie movie, but that really helps the tone in my opinion. Can't really place my finger on what it is, but I also mentioned it in my last review of What We Do in the Shadows, which is another low budget movie. But there's just something about indie movies that big blockbusters don't have. There's something to do with the tone. As I said, I can't really point out what it is because I'm not entirely sure, but there's just something about it which makes it feel kind of special. Where I said this kind of low budget feel helps the tone, also the addition of black and white filter throughout the whole movie also does help it. It just adds that bit more of mystery to it, which is what this movie is really going for and is very kind of important to it. It kind of just has this feel where you know something isn't right, something is a bit off here for the whole movie, and then you inevitably find out what that is with a good ending. And it uses a few techniques which weren't used too much around there but have been tried to replicate nowadays but failed, is where they kind of show you something in the future which kind of confuses you, and then as the movie goes on it kind of fills in the gaps between the present and what they showed you in the future, so it makes for like a unfolding story which you kind of know where it will end. Overall, that just makes for an interesting first movie which I think he executed well. As I've clearly stated, I am aware of what the budget is, but as I said, I'm going to treat this like any other film. Completely sympathetic, and I understand why it's like this, but I just have to point it out anyway. But right at the start, all the way through, I could tell that the audio wasn't great, the microphones weren't top class, there was a lot of background noise, and there's a lot of like audio cuts where suddenly there's background noise and then it suddenly stops and then you can hear it again. Even Christopher Nolan himself in an interview expressed that he was aware of this and that he was hoping that the engaging plot will make you ignore it, which to be honest it did for a large portion of the movie, but right at the beginning I really noticed it. And also some of the like combat scenes, hand-to-hand combat scenes, again I can understand. It's not really me hating on it, because I can completely understand why it's like this because of such a small budget, but you just have to point it out either way. It's really like a lot of cuts and shaky cam, if you will. Yeah, and although I praised the kind of style of storytelling where it jumps back and forth, with kind of the poor audio and the black and white, it does kind of make it a little bit confusing. Like some scenes you can't actually hear what they're saying to each other because the audio is a bit muffled, and the black and white, I know I've said good things about it, but sometimes you can't really see what is happening in the scene because of it. And yeah, where the jumps happen back and forth, it can kind of make you lose track, but these are just kind of the more negative things about the things I've praised. But overall, I think this is a great achievement from Christopher Nolan. I can see why he became such a great director, because for something on such a small budget, he really has a great accomplishment here. It's really cool to see where such a big director kind of started from, as I mentioned in the beginning, starting from $6,000 to making over a $200 million movie. It's honestly such a great accomplishment, and it's really interesting to see where his origin story lies. One thing I noticed, I had to quickly note this down before I forgot it when I was watching the movie, but in one of the doors in the movie you can see a Batman sticker on it, and it's just like, it's crazy to think, him seeing that, he would probably never have thought that in about 10 years time he would be making the best trilogy of Batman movies ever. Anyways, as I said, I'm kind of putting it in comparison to other films. I'm not really taking into account that it's low budget. I'm not kind of lowering my opinion on it just because it's low budget, but it's still got a solid score. I would give it a 6 out of 10. Once again, completely understandable of the budget, but I'm just being as honest as I can be. I would recommend watching for kind of big Nolan fans, just to see where he began. And if you're kind of a fan of like these small, low budget crime kind of thriller indie things, this might be a good film for you, as I've heard a lot of people praise it for that. Also, I also recommend it to young people who are looking into making films, or are making their own small films. It would just be cool to see what Nolan used early on in his career, and maybe you could use that as well, and who knows, maybe become the next Christopher Nolan. But anyways, this is my first review in my new Nolan series leading up to Tenet. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and if you could, a subscription would be really appreciated. I know I say that all my videos, but when I come onto my account and I see there's been more subscriptions added per day, it makes me happy. Also, a like would be also appreciated in the same sense, and let me know in the comments what you thought of following. Anyways, take care, and I'll see you in my next video.